Welcome, everyone. Today's webinar about Provence and the French Riviera, where we'll be heading at the beginning of May next year. Just a couple of quick words for those who are new to us, and if you've heard this 100 times already, just indulge me for a moment. Wheel and Anchor is all about bringing travelers together, what that means. I've been organizing trips for Canadians to places all around the world for over 30 years. So I've learned a little bit about what makes these kind of organized group travel experiences great and memorable. So all of that knowledge and all those learnings I took. And the most important thing is really identifying with the audience, with your members. I mean, we define ourselves as a community because it's important to us that we bring in the type of people who really want to travel in a way that is that follows sort of our traveler's creed, which some of you who, if you've joined recently, you will have read it. If you didn't, you'll probably find it in your emails from whenever you joined us. But we like to say it's kind of like exploration at a slower pace, the ability to meet interesting people along the way, not only those who you travel with, but also the other people that we meet along the tour. And just having a very respectful, inquisitive, I would say already knowledgeable. I always say, it's funny if if traveling with a group of people and then somebody will ask what somebody else might consider to be a stupid question. And it's like, listen, we've all asked them before. But what I find interesting on our groups is that just doesn't really happen. And it's not that we all want to learn. We all know some things. I mean, some people have traveled a lot more and others not so much, but just the way that we collectively learn and gather information. And this is what travel is all about. It's basically a learning experience and learning through all your senses. Anyway, I won't say any more about that. I could go on and on about what our philosophy is, but we share that as a community. And my personal goal for every one of our members, for everyone in Canada, is that people have the opportunity to become well-traveled, and well-traveled in the sense that you feel a part of a place, not just that you've been on some tour and visited 10 countries in 2 weeks, but rather that you've taken something away, the essence of what it's, in this case, France. What's the essence of France and French culture and French people? And so, what I find is, when you've really experienced that on a trip, when you've become connected to people and to the place, you open the newspaper and you read something, you think, I was there, and I can remember the place and I can remember the people, and it's a different experience than sort of a lot of sort of ordinary tours. So enough about that. Let's start talking about Provence. First of all, by way of introduction, my name again, Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor, curator of all of the trips that we do. But of course, I couldn't do all this stuff without my amazing team of people, in particular, Paula, our senior trip specialist. Many of you will have spoken to Paula before. Good morning, Paula, again.
Yeah.
And hiding in the background is Barb, who is also another amazing trip specialist. And these are the people who will answer your questions and help you to get booked on any of our trips, not just France. So today we're going to be taking you, presumably you have some interest, curiosity about what Provence is all about. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a tour. We're covering off a good chunk of this amazing, you could spend months here. Some people do. I mean, a lot of people, not a lot, but some people buy houses in Provence and spend part of the year there. Sounds idyllic. So we're going to try and condense that experience into 12 nights in Provence, where we're going to be going next May. So I'll share with you for a moment the map. Let's take a look first of all at the inset. So obviously we're talking about the Provence, which is this whole area of southeastern France. And so one can fly in to join us in Nice, where the official beginning of the program will be. If you're joining us in Corsica before, Corsica is down here, as I mentioned, to the southeast. We will be taking an overnight ferry from our last stop there, which is Bastia, to Toulon, and then coming by train up to Nice. But you can fly into Nice. At the moment, You know what? I'm not even sure, Paula. Do you recall, were there any there used to be direct flights from Toronto to Nice, and then they suspended everything during COVID, and then they brought a lot of them back, and I don't even remember anymore. But
Yeah, I have, because we have an air specialist now doing the flights. I haven't looked at these
yeah, it's
specifically for current schedules at the moment. Sorry
yeah,
about
it's
that.
not consequential, but it's anyway, it's not difficult to get to Nice. It's a big international airport, and it is obviously the gateway to the French Riviera in this part of France. And so, from our base in Nice, where we spend the first 4 nights, we're going to be exploring, obviously Nice itself, which is an amazing city. I've been so many times. I really really like Nice. They say the sun shines every day of the year in Nice. I don't think that's entirely true, but they do have an inordinate amount of sunshine, so it's a great spot. As I say, where we'll get a sampling of the French Riviera, taking in Saint-Paul-de-Vence and Grasse, and doing a little boat tour. After the first 4 nights, we're going to be driving up into the Haute-Provence, which is this sort of, generally speaking, this area here, to the north of the coast. We're going to be staying in Forcalquier, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. From here, we can explore east and west over to the Luberon area. We can go over into the Parc de Verdon, which is where this amazing gorge is. So that will take in our 4 nights in the Haute-Provence, High Provence. And then we're going to travel via Aix-en-Provence. This is actually where we stayed last year. And again, I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute why I decided to stay in these two towns. And so we're going to see Aix-en-Provence, home of Cézanne, of course, and a favored spot of Hemingway as well. We'll spend a part of the day there, have lunch. And the last 4 nights of our trip, we're going to be staying here in Saint-Remy de Provence, which is about 20 kilometers south of Avignon on the Rhone River. And this allows us to explore this area of Western Provence called Les Alpes, which is another mountain range. There's a lot of mountains, I mean, not like the Alps mountains, but very tall hills that sort of define the landscape in Provence. So that's where we'll spend the end of our trip. And then from here, it's a short hop back to Marseille Airport for those who are going to fly home or continue elsewhere on another journey in Europe, or continue over to Agde. Actually, specifically Montpellier is where we're going to begin our Canal du Midi trip, which is just a little bit further to the west. A beautiful town. And as I say, that's another trip that's going to follow. So I'll touch on that a little bit later. But for now, let's just take a couple of shots. I just wanted to show you a couple of photos. This is our group from last October that was in Provence here. We're actually in the Luberon, in the village of Gordes, coincidentally aptly named after me, not quite, maybe the other way around, as well as Le Castellet olive oil factory, which is, I have to say about this picture, this was actually a stop that wasn't planned on our itinerary, because we're known for not necessarily always following the itinerary. I mean, we covered the main highlights, but we were visiting another village nearby, and then somebody mentioned, or I picked up a brochure and I found this great olive oil place, and it was an amazing visit. So we said, let's go, let's pop in. We dropped in. It was literally a 45-minute stop. Amazing experience learning about the olive oil specific to that region. And so that was part of the fun that we had there. And as you can see by the shopping bags, almost everybody took a little something with them. And so that's part of the fun. So good. Let's talk about the day-by-day itinerary. As I say, we're going to start off in Nice, and Nice is, the grande dame of cities along the French Riviera. And as I mentioned, I've been many times. I love it. Nice, obviously popular in the summertime for its incredible beaches, which are all stone, by the way. This isn't sand. From the distance, it looks like sand, but it's all small stones. At this time of the year, you've been reading the headlines. It's been 40 degrees in southern France and southern Europe. So the beaches will be packed. But you have this incredible city that embodies all of the styles of architecture that you can expect. And also these incredible beaches. And so this is really, as I say, the gateway to the whole French Riviera. And the 4 nights that we spend here, and I say that you may want to fly in. Often our members will fly in a day or two early just to sort of get over the jet lag, if you're not joining us from Corsica, to be able to wander around the city. And we're going to be staying just to the west of the downtown part to the west of Place Messina, which is the main square in Nice, about a 10-minute walk away. And from here, you can explore all this here. This is all Old Nice, and we're going to be taking a tour around that with our local guide, who sadly could not join us today. Unfortunately, she's super busy. Everybody is very busy in all of Europe these days with the boom in tourism that's going on. But she is going to be looking after us while we're here in Nice, and taking us on our first full day there on a half day, mostly walking tour around Vieille Nice, Old Nice, which is these super narrow alleyways. I mean, classic from like you see in a lot of the older cities in Europe, but there's something a little bit different to it. Particularly, it's bordered by the Sulea, the Cour de Sulea, the market, which has products from all around the Provence area. And I know it's one of those ones where we sometimes have to nudge people along because they like to explore all the different things, and we'll see a lot of the stuff where it's produced as we travel through Provence. So we'll spend a good morning getting to know Nice, wandering around, discovering some of the things that we can do on our free day. We'll have a lovely lunch in town, and then head over to the port, which you can see here. So Nice itself is on the other side of this hill, and we'll head over to the port and then do a lovely boat cruise around along the coast, specifically past Villefranche-sur-Mer, which is just over here to the right, is one of the towns along the coast that's quite famous, and then Cap Ferrat, which is a peninsula that sticks out and has wonderful 18th century mansions, and so you'll get a real sense of, this is obviously the favored part of the rich and famous, so to speak, that come and have homes here and live here for part of the year, particularly in the summertime. And so you'll be mesmerized by the coast of the Riviera that we get to experience on a couple hours boat tour from sort of in and out in Nice. And then by that time, given that it's our second day, we'll have had a long day. So we'll have an evening at leisure and get ready to head out for our second day, where we're going to be heading our first venture out into the hills, specifically to Saint-Paul-de-Vence and to Grasse in the morning. This town that we visit sits up on a hilltop. Again, a lot of the towns in Provence, because of the landscape, are up on a hilltop, is perhaps best known as a village of artists. And I've even bought sort of a little piece of art, something that fit the budget here. And Saint Paul is definitely a touristy place. You're going to see a lot of visitors when we come in here. But what strikes me is when you walk in through the main gate of town, and the French people are all playing pétanque or boule, the game with the balls. They've got a whole square right by the entrance of town, and you immediately feel like, yes, I'm in southern France. The town also was is famous for the cemetery, which has the grave of Marc Chagall, one of the famous Impressionist artists, who spent a lot of time here and in the area around Saint Paul. And so it's a fairly compact town. It's a fair bit of it's on a hill, so it's up and down, and has amazing views over the surrounding countryside. So we'll have lunch actually at a spot that is literally almost where this photo was taken from, looking out over the town, and then we'll head in the afternoon to Grasse, which is nearby. This is the world headquarters of perfume making, and so it's hard to visit Provence and not learn about everything that goes into the making of perfume. And specifically, we'll visit Fragonard, which is a massive perfume factory. It was actually an 18th century building that they completely renovated and still manufacture perfumes in. In fact, I think the Chanel number 5, one of the famous products of Chanel, was originally they originally invented it or discovered it or whatever, mixed it here in this factory at Fragonard. And so this is a favorite because you really understand the process of making perfume using flowers and all the stuff from the area around Provence. So I got a lovely day getting to know a little bit of the area outside. We then have a free day. And of course, this is, for me, an important part of our trips, that you have time to explore on your own. This is where you know, the magic of travel, as I like to say, happens because you can find out so many things. What can you do in Nice? Oh, you can do a million things in Nice. We'll hand you a Nice transport card that gives you transportation all along the French Riviera, not into Monaco, but up to Cap d'Aille, which is adjacent to Monaco. So you may want to just go to Cap Ferrat or Villefranche, or one of these places, and just wander around. Honestly, what I like to do most is just wander along the Promenade des Anglais. That is the long boulevard that runs adjacent to the beach in Nice. For those that want to visit Monaco, it's easy to do because there is a train station in Monaco. It's like a 20-minute train ride from Nice. We decided not to put it in because Monaco is on a lot of people's lists, but it's one of those places that it's interesting to visit, and yet it's at the same time it's all about over the top glitz and glamour and luxury, and you know, people want to go and get their selfie in front of the Monte Carlo casino and all the rest of it, but it's not really conducive to a sightseeing tour, which is why it's best explored on your own, and very easy to do. So, you know, perhaps our hosts will go along with those if a bunch want to go and see Monaco. As I say, it's super easy to do on your own, accessible by train that goes like every 30 minutes. So you could visit Monaco, but there's so many other places to visit along the French Riviera. So that's just, you have many, many options for a free day in Nice. We'll then wave goodbye and head up into the Haute-Provence, as I mentioned before, our destination being Forcalquier. We'll stop along the way for lunch at another medieval hilltop town called Entrevaux. And then we'll end up in Forcalquier, which is about an hour away to the north of Aix-en-Provence, where we stayed last year. And I want to explain why we're staying here. Last year we stayed in Aix-en-Provence, beautiful town, university town, the home of Paul Cézanne, another famous French artist. But what we found was the parts of Provence that are really most interesting for people to see, the parts that people want to see, are places like Luberon, like Parc de Verdun, like the Rhone River, Avignon, Arles, and all the rest of it. So we just spent a lot of time driving. And so I thought, okay, let's then spend 4 nights here. We still have to drive around, but we are in the heart, if you will, of Haute-Provence. And Forcalquier is a lovely Renaissance, sort of a Renaissance medieval town. We'll spend some time exploring it with our guide, Patrick. Patrick is going to be with us for the rest of our tour in Haute-Provence and Les Alpes. And he's a great guy, again, handpicked, because we had him last year on our trip, and I'm like, I need you. So that's why we have Patrick, who's going to be taking us around. We're going to be going around as well in small vehicles. So we will be in probably 2 7-passenger vans. So again, it just makes it easier for negotiating and visiting and making quick stops here and there. This is how we like to travel at Wheel and Anchor. So as I say, we're going to be staying in Forcalquier, and from here, we'll obviously get familiarized with the town. We'll have a free day to explore it as well. And we're going to head out, though, to visit, as I say, the area around Luberon, which is about 45 minutes to the west. And it's here that we're going to, Luberon is sort of like, it's like the Tuscany to southern France. It's like one hilltop village after another. I pointed out one of them before, which is called Gordes, that I took that group picture in front of. We're going to visit places like the Abbaye de Saint-Onc, which is a stunning 12th century abbey that you see here. You see it here all with the colorful lavender fields. We're a little bit before the blooming lavender season, which doesn't start generally until sort of July. But the countryside nonetheless is really amazing, and visiting some of these historical spots is really cool. We'll stop in Gou, we'll stop in Roussillon, which has this very, very cool Roman bridge. And as I say, we'll sort of, make a number of stops. And we put in our itinerary sort of the more or less outline of things that we're going to do. But the beauty of it is, and particularly because we're going to be traveling in small groups, is that, and with Patrick, we said, well, let's stop there and let's stop there. So we're a lot more flexible and and able to sort of bounce around and visit the areas around Luberon. Next day, we're going to head to the east. So we're going to head up to this area called Parc de Verdon. Two particular towns in here. These photos were taken by myself, actually. Moustier, which is a lovely village that's really nestled into the base of these mountains. And we don't often think about southern France as having such high mountains as they do, all limestone, like you see. Some of our members last year even climbed up to this little chapel that's up here in the top of the mountain with an incredible view out over the town, again, over the countryside. So we'll spend some time here in Moustier. We'll have lunch down by the riverside. And in the afternoon, we'll take a drive out. And that would be me with a photo that one of our members took in front of the Gorge du Verdon, which is, again, I had not been in this area specifically before. And we were all just blown away by this incredible gorge, like the Grand Canyon in the middle of France, that you just don't expect this kind of landscape. So we were all really taken by the beauty of this area higher up as I say, in the northeastern part of Provence. We'll take a free day in Forcalquier, and so there are plenty of things to explore on your own. And in fact, by this time, we'll have spent a couple of days in Forcalquier, but out, visiting other parts of the region. And so it's a day to explore some of the things that there are to do in town. There's a castle that you can walk up to, but what I found in our experience is that a lot of our members just like to just relax, sit in a cafe, watch, visit some of the local museums, taste some of the local food. Ratatouille, which we're all familiar with, is one of the things that sort of hails from this part of Provence. So from here, after we've spent 4 nights in Forcalquier in the Haute-Provence, we head now across Provence to the western part of the region. We're going to stop on this day in Aix-en-Provence for a couple of hours because it is worth visiting this city. As I mentioned before, home of Paul Cézanne, and Cézanne is mentioned everywhere. But I think what's relevant for us as well, Anglo-Saxons, is of course the fact that Ernest Hemingway spent quite a bit of time and was very taken by the whole region around Provence and Aix-en-Provence. So we'll explore this town, walking around the main parts, having lunch. We'll arrive then in Saint-Remy later in the afternoon, and this isn't a great picture here. It looks like it was taken on a hot day in France, but this is known as the part of Provence called Les Alpes. And so we'll spend a day, part of our next full day, getting ourselves oriented in Saint-Remy itself, but we'll also head out to Les Baux-de-Provence, which, as you can see here, another super picturesque medieval town that is actually it was actually in Saint-Remy is where they have the psychiatric hospital where Van Gogh spent a year of his life. And so a lot of people don't know Van Gogh, the artist, he had his issues, as brilliant as he was, and he spent his time under supervision in Saint-Remy. And so it's an interesting part of the history here, because you normally associate him, the Dutch painter, and he spent time here and there, but he spent part of his time in Provence. And on this day as well, we'll visit that same mill that we discovered by coincidence last year, Le Moulin Castellat, and taste some of the olive oil and part of this region. So it'll be a lovely day exploring. I think maybe the highlight of our time in this part of Provence will be Avignon. Avignon obviously sits on the side of the Rhone River, and its most famous landmark, of course, the Palais du Pape, the Palace of the Popes, which is an incredible building that dates back, I think, to before the 12th century, but it was famous as the residence of the popes in and around the 14th century. And it is a mammoth structure in the center of the old town. And again, last year, because we visited from Aix-en-Provence, we didn't have time to actually tour the Palais itself. We're going to take some time to go around. I mean, again, you could take days, but we're going to spend at least a little bit of time, hours, exploring Palais des Papes, as well as all of the other beautiful streets and so on around Avignon. So we'll have almost a full day to enjoy Avignon, which, as I say, is only about 20 kilometers away from Remy de Provence. And so the beauty again is that, you know, you visit a place like Avignon, which again, very busy. Also, all the river cruise boats stop here. So it can be, you know, quite a lot of tourists coming and going, but then we retreat later on in the afternoon to Saint-Remy, which is such a quaint little town. We'll also head out again further to the very western edge of Provence, again on the Rhone River, and we'll visit Arles. Arles is again a picturesque medieval town. One of the interesting things about Arles is they have a building called the Luma Foundation that was built by our own Frank Gehry, whose name is coming up in the news again because, of course, he's supposed to be building some crazy looking condo towers in Toronto, and so that is the Canadian connection, if you will, to Arles, but it's also the area which is part of the or adjacent to La Camargue, which is the wildlife reserve that forms sort of part of the delta, if you will, of the Rhone River as it exits into the Mediterranean. So again, we'll get a combination between some of these very, very picturesque towns of southern Provence, as well as some of the countryside and the nature that you just don't expect to get when you're visiting France. So that will pretty much wrap up our trip from Saint-Remy. We'll bring you either to the airport in Marseille, or for those that decide to continue on and a little adventure through France, we'll continue over to the Canal du Midi and Montpellier, which will be our starting point for that trip. And just a couple of words about that. Again, this was the most popular segment of our France trip last year. We charter these canal boats that you can see pictured here with some of our members waving on board, and we travel 7 nights up the canal between a town of Agde all the way up to Carcassonne, which is the most famous and best preserved medieval fortress in all of Europe. That's where we end the trip. Well, we end the trip actually in the wonderful city of Toulouse. And so I will tell you all about that trip tomorrow on our webinar if you decide to join us. In the meantime, I'll wrap up by giving you a little bit of information about this trip. All of this, of course, is in our program itinerary that we released on the newsletter on the weekend. If you didn't get a copy, then we'll send you a copy together with a replay of this webinar. So this trip through Provence, you can see here May 4th to the 16th. You see pricing twin double. We have some lovely hotels picked out, again, boutique hotels that took us a lot of time to get the room allotment that we wanted to. So we're returning to the same hotel in Nice and to some lovely, lovely hotels that Patrick recommended to us in both Forcalquier and Saint-Remy de Provence. As usual, of course, all of the inclusions here that I won't go through. This is 12 nights with breakfast and usually either a lunch or a dinner every day. We have some great restaurants picked out that we enjoyed last year. And of course, as I say, we'll have our guides in both Nice and Patrick for the rest of Provence in that program. And important, I think, to mention as well, as I mentioned, this program is going to be based on a group of probably 12 to 14 people. We're going to have 2 smaller vans. It's the best way to go around. This is how we did it last year, and it just allows us to be a lot more nimble in exploring Provence. That's how you want to be. Exclusions, airfare, and insurance as per usual. Airfares into France, this part of France, have been pretty consistent. Airfares have gone up globally, but to Europe they're not as bad. But this gives you a little bit of a sense of getting into Nice and out of Marseille, what you're looking at. So we are able to offer an early booking bonus as well. So if you join us for this program up until the 15th of September, there's a little bit of a rebate that we can give you, because the hotels give us a better deal if we can get names and deposits into them early. So almost time for questions and answers. And in the meantime, I'm sure if you have any questions that we aren't able to answer today, or you didn't get the answer to, then just drop us a note. Paula, Barb, always there to answer your questions. And if not, they'll come to me. And if not, I'll go to one of our great partners in France. So Paula, where do we stand with questions and answers?
Quite a few, handful that have come in already.
Great.
So one of them is asking, how easy is it to communicate in these regions of France with English only online?
Yeah, so France is France. And people speak French. No, listen, in these towns, Nice in particular, you will find that certainly with the hotel and in any of the tourist areas, they speak they speak sufficient English that you can get by. And so, what I would say is, it's when you get away from the tourist areas, if you go to that little boulangerie, then, although a lot of them speak English, they kind of refuse to speak English. That's just how it is in France. But, you can get by. In this day and age, I tell you, this little tool with Google Translate is amazing, because you can type something in if you really get into a pickle. But listen, people speak enough French to get by. We had no issues. Nobody made a comment to me about language. And so, brush off the old school books and so get some French phrases. We'll teach you some at the beginning of the trip.
Great idea. And yeah, I'm with you. And Ingrid popped in the chat box as well. Google Translate's our best friend.
Is our best friend. I use it all the time.
Well, when you're in a destination. We've had quite a few members inquire about combining Corsica with Provence, and then Provence with Canal du Midi. Can you touch on the connections at all for us?
Yep, absolutely. So just briefly, our Corsica program begins in Corsica, which is also preceded by Sardinia. I mean, you can travel with us for months in a row, but so to get from Corsica to Provence, we take an overnight ferry. We organize it for you, all in private cabins, from Bastia to Toulon. So it leaves 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It arrives the following morning at 8. And then we'll catch a train transfer from Toulon up to Nice. It's about an hour. And so all that is arranged. The tickets are arranged. We'll look after it. Depending on how many people go and who's going where and who's hosting and all the rest of it, there may be a host that accompanies, but if not, you'll be looked after at departure and on arrival. So it's fairly easy to manage. It's everything. The system works very well. So that's how those connect. And for those who are looking to connect Provence with Canal du Midi, we will be doing that as a group. It may be the same host, again, that we haven't determined yet, but we'll take the train from probably the nearest TGV station. So we'll bring you there, and then on the other end, you'll be met in Montpellier and picked up by Henk and Audrey, who are hosts for our Canal du Midi trip, our captains and hosts, and then they'll look after you there until the end of that trip in Toulouse. So so all of those transfers connecting the programs will be arranged by us.
Fabulous. Thank you. A couple of more questions have come in here. So Millie was asking if we have a recommend. So for those looking to do in general, any, pre or post, specifically, this question came in asking about Paris. Do we have any tour recommendations for
Yeah,
that?
we don't organize customized pre and post tours in other cities, just because we just don't have, frankly, the bandwidth to be able to do that. Paris is an obvious choice. And honestly, there's a million options to things to do in Paris, and a million local tours that you can book online. And so, yeah, we don't have any specific recommendations, but I think Paris is a good place to fly to and spend a few nights. And then you can continue, depending on if you're going to join us in Corsica, you can fly down from Paris's Orly airport into Corsica, or you can take the TGV to Nice very, very easily. It goes nonstop multiple times a day. So yeah, so Paris is an obvious choice. There's so many different options. You could visit the Italian Riviera beforehand. You could, yeah, I don't even know where to begin, but I think Paris is an obvious one.
Definitely. And there's a new Ottawa to Paris route as well that Air France is offering. That's become,
There you go. So that makes it easier for our members up in Ottawa.
yes. We don't have as many options direct off
No.
Europe. So that was appealing. Carolyn has a question that's come in here in terms of what is the suggested fitness level for this trip?
Yeah, so this program is, listen, with all of our trips, we sort of suggest that the minimum, level of fitness is that you should be able to walk about a mile, so about 1.6 kilometers in about 20 to 25 minutes, just so that, and that's a fairly leisurely pace. But that would be sort of what we consider sort of the minimum standard to be able to do. But we're not, except for those folks who want to go on more longer walks and hikes on the free days, we don't have long hikes and so on this trip. The towns, as I mentioned, all hilltop towns, it is up and down, so you need to be fairly good on your feet. Yeah, that's what I
Is
would
it
say.
like cobblestone roadways?
You have to anticipate, not always, more and more places they're taking away the cobblestone, but you would, I would say, anticipate that it's going to be cobblestone sidewalks and roadways, again, particularly in the smaller towns like Moustier and Forcalquier and all these little towns. They haven't changed the road surface in 200 years. Well, they have, but
I like that touch of
yeah.
cobblestone roads. And
But it does you need to be pretty able on your feet. Yeah.
No, fair. The other question that we had come in was, what weather temperatures should one be prepared to pack for at this time of year in the regions?
Yep. So this time of the year, I think, is the perfect time for visiting the south of France, because even you get into June and it gets quite warm for my liking. But the temperatures in Provence, typically at this time of the year, the daytime highs will be in the low 20s. So 2022 on average. Could be warmer with climate change, but in the evening it drops down to like the low, it drops down to 10 to 15 degrees. So it's a great time to go. So on average, again, you get up into the Aix-en-Provence and Forcalquier, it's probably a little cooler. Daytime maybe sort of 16, 17 on average.
Perfect. That you touched on climate change, and that leads into the next question. Paul was asking, what do we propose in terms of dealing with extreme weather conditions? How does that impact or influence one's travel insurance? I think before you answer that, Gordon, I'm like, you'd have to talk to your insurance directly on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Be a bit more specific, but I'm assuming like if there's an extreme weather event,
yeah, it's very difficult. It's impossible for us to answer what if questions in terms of what if this happens, what if that happens, because there's just an infinite number to be able to address. As it relates to insurance specifically, you have to look at what the insurance company actually prescribes. If it's something that is an unforeseen event that impacts your travel insurance company will generally step in. That's the point of travel insurance. But yeah, specifics are really impossible to.
In the general, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that covers the questions that have come in so far.
Cool.
And
all right then. Well, sounds good. It sounds like, and we know that there's a lot of interest for this trip because it's such a great time last year. And I tell you, Provence, I could go every year. I could go every place every year, but I'm only in one body. So I hope you'll consider joining us next year. As I mentioned, do drop us a note if you are interested to join us. Paula, Barb are there on standby. And otherwise, yeah, I hope you'll consider joining us, and please do come and see our Canal du Midi webinar tomorrow. And I'm really excited to bring you that program as well. I think all these are great. And I'm passionate because we put so much effort into coordinating these ourselves, and nobody else offers them. They're the best. So come join us. Thanks for being on the webinar today, and we'll see you all again very, very soon.